They said peace was impossible. They said Gaza would never see hope again. But today, something shifted in the Middle East, and the world is watching. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard genuine hope coming out of Gaza? Not promises, not political games, but real, tangible hope that families might reunite, that children might sleep without the sound of bombs, that mothers might stop counting the days since they last saw their sons. Yesterday, President Trump addressed his cabinet and made a statement that sent shockwaves across the region. He claimed Hamas is ready to disarm. Now, before you react, before you pick a side, let's talk about what this really means for the people of Gaza. Because this isn't about politics. This is about human lives. For over a year, Gaza has been a graveyard. Hospitals turned to rubble, schools silenced, families torn apart. The numbers are staggering, but numbers can't capture the weight of a mother's grief or the emptiness in a child's eyes who has lost everything. The ceasefire that began recently was not just a pause in violence. It was the first breath of air for people who've been suffocating. And now we're hearing about disarmament. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, sat in that room with absolute confidence and said, they're going to give up the AK-47s. But here's what the media won't tell you. Hamas has been saying for weeks that they'd consider laying down arms, but only if it means a real Palestinian governing authority takes over. Not foreign occupation, not external control, Palestinian governance. Think about that for a second. A group that's been labeled as terrorists by the West is saying, we'll disarm if it means our people get real leadership, real security, real dignity. That's not extremism. That's people desperate for normalcy. The story that broke yesterday also included something deeply human. The remains of Ran Gvili, the last captive held in Gaza, were returned to Israel. And Trump praised Hamas for helping with this. Let that sink in. In the middle of all this chaos, in the middle of a war that's claimed tens of thousands of lives, there was a moment of humanity. A family got closure. A body came home. But here's the question nobody's asking. How many Palestinian families are still waiting? How many mothers in Gaza are praying for the same closure? How many children were never returned to their parents? The media coverage is asymmetrical, and so is the grief. This ceasefire isn't perfect, it's fragile, it's held together by hope and exhaustion, but it's something. And for the people of Gaza, who've endured more than any human should ever have to endure, it's a chance to rebuild, a chance to breathe, a chance to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world hasn't completely forgotten them. As we delve into this story, remember, behind every headline is a heartbeat. Behind every political statement is a family waiting to go home. Let me paint you a picture. It's a cold morning in Gaza. The sun rises over broken buildings and empty streets. A mother steps outside her makeshift shelter because her home was destroyed months ago, and for the first time in over a year, she doesn't hear drones overhead. She doesn't flinch at distant explosions. It's quiet. That silence is everything. This ceasefire isn't just a political agreement. It's not just a headline. For the people of Gaza, it's the difference between life and death. It's the difference between a child playing outside and hiding in fear. It's the difference between hope and despair. But let's be honest. A ceasefire is not peace. It's a pause, and the people of Gaza know that better than anyone. They've lived through ceasefires before. They've rebuilt before, only to watch everything crumble again. So while the world celebrates, they're holding their breath, because they know how quickly things can fall apart. Trump's comments about Hamas disarmament are significant. If it happens, it could change everything. But here's what needs to happen alongside it. Accountability, justice, rebuilding. You can't ask people to put down their weapons and then leave them defenseless in a world that has already tried to erase them. The technocratic committee being set up to govern Gaza is a step in the right direction. Palestinians deserve to govern themselves. They deserve leaders who represent their interests, not foreign agendas. But this committee needs resources, needs international support. It needs the blockade to be lifted so that Gaza can breathe again. And let's talk about the children. An entire generation in Gaza has grown up knowing nothing but war. They've never seen their city whole. They've never felt safe. If this ceasefire holds, if disarmament happens, if rebuilding begins, these children might finally get a chance at a normal life. They might get to dream again. That's what's at stake here. Not just politics, not just power, but the future of an entire generation. So what do? How do we, as people watching from the outside, contribute to this fragile hope? We start by telling the truth. We stop dehumanizing Palestinians. We stop pretending this conflict is simple. We demand accountability from all sides. We push for lasting peace, not temporary pauses. And most importantly, we don't look away. Because the moment the world stops paying attention is the moment Gaza gets forgotten again. And these people have been forgotten too many times. Trump said it looks like Hamas will disarm. I hope he's right. I hope this is the beginning of something real. I hope the people of Gaza finally get the peace they've been praying for. But hope alone won't save them. Action will. Justice will. Humanity will. So as this story unfolds, let's choose to see the people behind the politics. Let's choose compassion over conflict. And let's choose to believe that even in the darkest places, light can still break through. Because Gaza deserves more than survival. Gaza deserves life. Let's get real for a moment. The narrative around Gaza has always been controlled. One side is painted as the victim, the other as the villain. But what if I told you the truth is far more complex and far more heartbreaking? Hamas has been called a terrorist organization for decades. And yes, violence has been part of their resistance. But let's not pretend this conflict started with Hamas. Let's not pretend that the people of Gaza woke up one day and chose war. This is generations of occupation, displacement, and desperation. This is what happens when people feel they have no other option. Now, Trump and his team are celebrating the possibility of Hamas disarming. And on the surface, that sounds like progress. But listen closely to what Hamas has actually been saying. They've repeatedly stated that disarmament is a red line. But they've also suggested they'd hand over weapons to a legitimate Palestinian authority. Not to Israel, not to the US, to their own people. That's not surrender. That's a call for sovereignty. Imagine if your homeland were under siege for 75 years. Imagine if your schools, hospitals, and homes were bombed. Imagine if your children grew up knowing nothing but checkpoints and airstrikes. Would you lay down your weapons without guarantees? Would you trust the same powers that destroyed your world to rebuild it? The second phase of the ceasefire deal includes disarmament and the establishment of a Palestinian technocratic committee to govern Gaza. That's a step forward. But it's also a gamble, because history has shown us that promises made to Palestinians are often promises broken. And yet, despite everything, there's hope. The people of Gaza aren't asking for much. They're not asking to erase Israel off the map. They're not asking for revenge. They're asking for the most basic human rights: freedom, safety, and dignity. They want their children to go to school without fear. They want to rebuild their homes. They want to live. Trump's statement yesterday was optimistic, maybe even genuine, but optimism without action is just noise. The real test isn't whether Hamas disarms, it's whether the international community follows through. Will Gaza get the aid it needs to rebuild? Will Palestinians finally get a state? Will the blockade end? Or will this ceasefire be another temporary pause before the cycle of violence starts again? Here's what breaks my heart. The people of Gaza have been betrayed so many times that even hope feels dangerous. They've seen ceasefires collapse. They've watched the world move on while they're still buried under rubble. And now, as the world celebrates this progress, they're cautiously, painfully trying to believe again. So when you see headlines about Hamas disarming, don't just think about weapons. Think about what it means for people to lower their defenses in a world that's never protected them. Think about the courage it takes to choose peace when you've only known war. That's the real story here, and it deserves to be told.